Welcome to the Podcast Rodeo Show. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. If you're new to the show, this is where we grab a random podcast and see how long I can hang on. Then I take my 16 years of podcasting experience and give you an honest first impression. And today we're going to be looking at dumb people with terrible ideas. It's hosted by Eric Gray, and it's listed in the news category. The description from my good friends at Apple Podcasts says, you're fascinated with people who make mistakes and also want to know more about the world, but don't want to read? In each episode, your brilliant and handsome narrator guides you through a single, well-researched story of dumb people, stupid ideas, occasional sound effects, 25 clever turns of a phrase, and tons of jokes that are really funny but aren't delivered like they're funny at all. This podcast is delighted by screw-ups, bad taste, and crappy people. It makes dumb people smart, and smart people laugh. The website for this is ericexplains.com. Now, normally I do not comment on your website. That's something I do on the podcast review show. But I got to tell you, when I go to this website, it looks like, I don't know, it was designed by Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker. It looks like somebody threw tomato paste on my screen. It's nothing but a giant red screen. Like, how much more red could this get? None more red. And when you finally scroll down, I see the episodes. And I think the problem here is at the very bottom, you have some sort of email sign-up form, and it appears to have really jacked up the format of your website. But before we get to that, I do need to remind you of one small fact.
The following is an opinion, and only an opinion. These are actual, honest first impressions. If you don't like the opinion, feel free to never listen again.
All right, and we're going to listen to this episode. It's always fun because I never know how loud to turn this up, but I'll have my hand on the volume as we hit play. We're going to listen to Frane Selak, I guess is how you say it, the world's most unluckiest man. And it goes a little something like this.
Frane Selak is a mild-mannered music teacher from Croatia. This man you have never heard of is quite possibly the most badass, battle-hardened motherfucker in the history of the world.
Okay, note to self, there are little E's next to the episode here in Apple, so this is explicit. And so far, great production, great pipes.
World. He's been dropped, driven over, damn near drowned. Frane Selak is a living version of the Final Destination movie. Most men battle their boss, or their cholesterol, or their in-laws. Frane Selak battles death itself, on the reg, and every time death tries to jam up on his nuts, Frane just says, "Try again, chief."
Nice.
You're about to hear the story of Frane Selak, the world's unluckiest man. This is Dumb People with Terrible Ideas. I'm your...
Okay, so right there, he's done a really good job. Run over, fallen. I don't know. He had a long list of stuff that this guy has done. And so right now, if you hit stop, you're like, wait, I want to hear the rest of this. And we're right at a minute. So the intro is phenomenal. Really good production.
I'm your host, Eric Gray. Frane Selak is not a criminal or a villain. He doesn't have a dangerous job, and he doesn't appear to have made many enemies. Except for the Grim Reaper, who has tried his best to kill Frane through multiple decades in amazingly creative ways, only to be foiled by Frane, whose only claim to fame is his increasingly stubborn refusal to die.
All right.
It all started in 1962 when Frane Selak took a trip by train. The train jumped the tracks through its icy mountain route, plunging hundreds of feet into a frozen river. 17 passengers died. But Frayne managed to swim to safety, even though water is the #1 cause of drowning. He suffered from hypothermia and a broken arm. He recovered comfortably at a hospital, surely grateful for his survival, probably thinking this was a one-time thing. Little did he know this was merely training camp for death, who had only begun to warm up and take practice swings in its attempt to force Frayne to stop breathing. A year later, Frayne Selak booked a last-minute flight to see his mom, who was in poor health. This was his first time in an airplane. And because it was a hurried booking, he was forced into a tiny seat at the...
The music is just a tad. I'm not having to strain a lot, but I want to keep going with the story here, but it's, in my opinion, just a little loud.
At the back of the plane, near the exit door. He was lucky to even get on the flight. The flight was uneventful. Passengers were drinking tea. Old Frayne was worried about his mom until suddenly both engines stopped. The plane nosed downward at a frightening angle. The cabin lost pressure, exploding the exit door beside him, sucking out a sweet and innocent flight attendant first, closely followed by Frayne, who found himself falling to the ground about 20,000 feet up. The plane crashed into a mountain, killing both pilots, all the passengers, and the flight attendant who had exited the blown-out door first in a most hurried way, who Frayne watched burst like a garbage bag filled with vegetable soup upon impact with the ground. Just moments before he, himself, landed gently into a haystack in the middle of a lovely Croatian farm.
Wow.
Much like a small child slipping into sweet slumber during a summer shower. Uninjured and the only survivor. This was about the time that our hero said, "Fuck that," to traveling by train and air.
All right, well, let's give it the old... Holy, how do you not get injured falling 20,000 feet? Okay, so as we look at this show, it's, again, it's called Dumb People with Terrible Ideas. And I stopped here at 4 minutes. Poor Frayne has another 10 minutes of getting killed. And so the question is, do I want to hear the rest of this? Yes, I absolutely want to hear the rest of this podcast. So the production is great. Like I said, and I'm kind of splitting hairs. I would turn the background music down just a pinch. And typically why this is, it's because you've worked so hard on the background and the sound effects and the splashing that you kind of put it up a little louder than it needs to be because you're proud of it. And you should be. It's great production, but it's just a hair too loud. I would turn that down. But that, like I said, the biggest thing for me is your website's just horked at the moment. So, and I believe that's going to be fairly easy to fix as well. So again, the website, ericexplains.com, or do a search for dumb people with terrible ideas, or in this case, the luckiest dude in the world. And if you would like to have your show right here on the Podcast Rodeo Show, super simple. Go over to podcastrodeoshow.com, click on the Get Reviewed button, and you'll see there are a couple different options there. Now, what if you don't want reviewed, but you do like the show? Well, I now have a way for you to keep the show on the air. Just go over to podcastrodeoshow.com/support, and you'll see where you can buy me a coffee. You can do things on PayPal, etc., etc. So thanks so much for checking out the Podcast Rodeo Show. I'm Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. Thanks for joining me on my mission to rid the world of boring podcasts. Take care.